The grand miscalculation. The Galactic High Command chamber was silent, so silent that even the faint hum of the starship's engines felt deafening. Commander Vexer stood stiffly in the center of the vast, dimly lit room, his upper mandibles twitching involuntarily. He had faced countless battlefields, led devastating campaigns across the stars, and conquered entire planetary systems. But nothing had prepared him for this moment. Behind him, the holographic display loomed like a spectral judge. The words Operation Dominion. Earth pulsed in dark crimson, casting an eerie glow over the assembled high-ranking officers. But the mission name had been altered by someone with a cruel sense of humor. Now it read, Operation Dominion. Earth. The added question mark flickered mockingly, a reflection of the disaster that had unfolded. Vexer's bioluminescent patches flushed a deep, shameful shade of violet as he took a slow breath. He had been summoned for a debriefing, but he knew better. This wasn't just a review. This was an inquisition, a reckoning. At the head of the chamber, seated on a floating throne of shifting metal tendrils, was Supreme War Director Threxvan, the most feared strategist in the galaxy. His 6 crimson eyes bore into Vexer, their gaze as sharp as plasma blades. Beside him, Admiral Zoller, known for her ruthless efficiency, drummed her clawed fingers on the data tablet before her. To her left, Intelligence Director Slicks clicked his mandibles in irritation, while the ever-smirking General Tarkin, a veteran of 1,000 planetary sieges, folded his arms, amusement dancing in his reptilian gaze. Finally, Threxvan spoke. His voice was deep, resonating through the chamber like a distant explosion. Commander Vexer, he began, pausing just long enough for the weight of his words to sink in. Explain to us how an operation that was supposed to be a swift planetary conquest has resulted in a catastrophe that has made our empire the laughingstock of the galaxy. Vexer swallowed. There was no escaping this. He took another slow breath, his mind racing as he prepared his words carefully. There was no point in denying it. The operation had failed spectacularly. The overwhelming confidence before the fall. Honored members of the High Command, Vexer began, his voice measured. To understand what went wrong, we must first revisit what we believed would go right. He tapped his wrist console, and the holographic display shifted, revealing footage from 6 lunar cycles ago, the day the operation had been finalized. The recording showed a room filled with officers, strategists, and scientists. Their confidence was absolute. The mission briefing had been filled with laughter, smug certainty, and an air of inevitable victory. At the center of the footage, a younger, more assured Vexer stood before the very same High Command, gesturing to a rotating holographic image of Earth. This planet is primitive, past Vexer had declared. Its civilizations are fractured. Its technology is outdated. Its defenses are laughable. This will not be a war. It will be an extermination. Several of the High Command members in the present chamber exchanged knowing glances, recalling how eager they had all been for this easy conquest. The recording continued. Observe their largest predators, said Chief Bioweapon Engineer Draknell in the footage, pulling up data on Earth's wildlife. The most dangerous among them, creatures they call bears, are only 3 meters tall at best. Their venomous species are weak compared to the Morgathian acid serpents. Their aerial predators are no match for our void raptors. Past Vexer had nodded, pacing with excitement. And their military capabilities. The recording shifted again, displaying human warfare history. These so-called nuclear weapons they possess, scoffed Strategic Director Korek, are primitive, self-destructive, and largely ineffective against rapid planetary assaults. Their projectile-based firearms, outdated. Their armor, laughable. The High Command in the present chamber remained silent as they watched their past selves dismiss humanity with dangerous arrogance. We have conquered 17 similar civilizations, past Vexer had concluded, using the exact same approach. We will deploy war beasts, genetically engineered bioweapons specifically designed for Earth's environment. Once released, they will spread uncontrollably. Humans will be overrun in mere weeks. The confidence in his voice was staggering and entirely misplaced. Deployment. The beginning of the end. Vexer paused the recording and turned back to face the High Command. His voice was quieter now. The plan, as you all know, was simple. We would deploy our apex war beasts across strategic locations on Earth. The creatures were bioengineered for rapid reproduction and adaptability. Our estimates predicted that within 60 cycles, humanity's military infrastructure would collapse entirely. In reality, he hesitated before bringing up new footage. Grainy, chaotic battlefield recordings from the first wave of the invasion. The room washed as hundreds of Titan strikers, void raptors, and hadrontids were dropped onto Earth's surface. Gargantuan beasts, each designed for destruction, each a nightmare incarnate. For the first few days, things had gone exactly as planned. Cities fell. Entire military bases were annihilated. Humanity seemed to be crumbling. And then, something happened. The footage changed again, this time showing a group of human civilians. Not soldiers, not trained fighters, just civilians. They weren't fleeing from the war beasts. They were fighting back. And worse, they were winning. The unforeseen variable, human madness. At first, it had been dismissed as statistical anomalies, isolated cases, random acts of resistance. But the resistance didn't fade. It grew. Humans weren't running in terror as predicted. They were laughing, adapting, and most disturbingly, taming some of the war beasts. New reports came in. War beasts were being domesticated. Humans were training them. Captured void raptors were being used as aerial cavalry. Hadrontids, originally meant to cause mass destruction, were now being bred in containment zones to produce biofuel. Titan strikers, the Empire's most fearsome land predators, had become entertainment attractions in something called war beast wrestling. And then came the final insult. The display flickered again, revealing a human news broadcast. A smiling news anchor appeared, holding what appeared to be a baby shadow striker, one of the deadliest predators in the known galaxy. And in today's top story, the human anchor said cheerfully, "Galactic war beast adoptions are up 23% this cycle. Experts say they make fantastic companions, loyal, trainable, and perfect for protecting your home from unwanted alien invaders." The screen froze. The silence in the high command chamber was absolute. No one spoke. Vexer stood there, waiting for the inevitable explosion of anger. The realization was clear. They hadn't conquered humanity. They had given humanity an upgrade. Supreme War Director Threxpan finally broke the silence. "Commander," his voice was dangerously quiet, "explain to me exactly how this happened." Vexer swallowed hard. This was going to be a very, very long debriefing. The human problem. Vexer had fought in wars across 17 planetary systems. He had crushed empires, razed cities, and left civilizations in ruins. He had walked through the aftermath of battlefields, where the air still crackled with residual energy from orbital strikes. He had never known fear, until now. The Supreme War Director's 6 crimson eyes remained locked onto him, unblinking, unmerciful. The silence in the high command chamber was unbearable. Finally, Admiral Zoller leaned forward, her voice razor-sharp. "Commander Vexer, I will ask you one question. Answer carefully." Vexer stood at full attention, though his mind raced. "Did you, at any point," she continued, "account for the fact that humans might actually be insane?" The words sent a ripple through the room. It was a dangerous question, a ridiculous one. And yet, in the face of everything that had happened, it suddenly felt painfully legitimate. The humans had done things no species in the known galaxy would have dared. The unexpected resistance. Vexer took a deep breath. "Admiral, if I may." He gestured toward the holographic display. Let's review the facts. The display flickered, revealing battle reports, footage, intercepted human transmissions. The first images showed early human resistance, not organized armies, not elite warriors, but civilians, farmers, and even children fighting back with reckless abandon. They weren't just resisting. They were enjoying it. One of the recordings played a grainy video from a human stronghold labeled Florida, Sector G7. In it, a 6-meter void raptor, one of the Empire's deadliest aerial predators, was charging down a human soldier. It let out a piercing screech, its talons outstretched. The soldier, shirtless, holding a can of beer. He didn't run. Instead, the human leaped at the creature, grabbed its throat midair, and began wrestling it to the ground while screaming, "You think you can take me, buddy?" The camera trembled as other humans cheered in the background. Vexer paused the footage. No one in the chamber spoke. With another tap, he pulled up a second video from Sector J12, Siberia. A war beast, one of the apex reapers, designed for extreme cold combat, had been deployed to freeze and eliminate human forces. It was a perfect predator, with heat-absorbing exoskeletons, razor-sharp mandibles, and ultra-dense muscle fibers. It had been engineered to be unstoppable. The recording showed 3 old Siberian hunters, calmly standing outside a wooden cabin, staring at the creature as it approached. It roared, its massive, jagged form cutting through the blizzard. The oldest human took a slow drag from his cigarette, exhaled, and muttered something. The translator struggled but eventually produced a result. Finally, some real prey. The humans attacked it first. They moved without fear, without hesitation. And within minutes, the apex reaper was dead. One of the hunters casually tossed its severed mandible onto the snow, muttering something else. The translator took longer this time before it finally displayed. Meh. Too easy. The room was deathly silent. The taming of the war beasts. Vexer exhaled slowly. That wasn't the worst part. He tapped again, and the screen shifted. New footage. It showed Titan strikers, the most ferocious, unstoppable, genetically engineered monstrosities the Empire had ever created, being ridden by humans. A group of Earthlings, dressed in leather jackets and sunglasses, had somehow turned them into motorcycle replacements. The creatures, originally bred to annihilate civilizations, now had custom saddles, exhaust pipes, and neon paint jobs. One had flames painted on its sides. Another had a human sitting backward on it, drinking a human beverage called a milkshake, while scrolling through a smartphone. The high command officers in the chamber stared in horror. Admiral Zoller's claws twitched. "Commander Vexer," she said slowly, "are you telling me that our most powerful war beasts have been turned into domesticated playthings?" Vexer cleared his throat. "It's worse than that, Admiral." He tapped the console one last time. A live-streamed human event appeared on the display. A stadium filled with thousands of screaming humans. Massive, roaring creatures being released from containment zones into a large, reinforced arena. A booming voice from a loudspeaker echoed, "Well, see you to first ever intergalactic war beast wrestling CAM Pion ship." On the field, a heavily tattooed human, clad in spiked armor, flexed his muscles before charging directly at a 40-foot shadow mauler. He didn't have weapons. He had his fists. And he won. The camera zoomed in on the shadow mauler, now lying unconscious. The human victor stood atop it, raising his arms in triumph. The crowd went wild. A commercial played immediately after. It showed custom war beast saddles, exotic pet food specifically for domesticated Titan strikers, and luxury Void Raptor transport services. At the bottom of the screen, in bold letters, "Own your own war beast today. Call now." The display cut off. The High Command's breakdown. Vexer turned back to the High Command. No one spoke. For the first time in galactic history, the mightiest warlords of the Empire looked defeated, Supreme War Director Threxvan sat motionless. General Tarkin's arms were still folded, but his expression had darkened. Intelligence Director Slicks slowly removed his data visor and rubbed his forehead. Finally, Admiral Zoller leaned forward. Her voice was dangerously low. "So let me get this straight, Commander. We did not just fail to conquer Earth. We gave them free weapons, superior war beasts, and entertainment." Vexer hesitated. "Yes, Admiral. And we turned them into the deadliest, most unpredictable warriors in the known galaxy." "That is correct." Zoller exhaled sharply. "We have doomed ourselves." Threxvan, still silent, finally let out a slow, exhausted sigh. Then, at last, he spoke. "We need to leave." The room turned toward him in shock. "What?" Admiral Zoller asked. Threxvan's gaze was distant. "We cannot afford to wage war against a species that tames destruction for fun." He leaned forward, speaking with the grave authority of a warlord who had seen too much. "We retreat. Immediately. Before humanity decides that they want to conquer us." The chamber remained silent. And for the first time in galactic history, the Empire fled. Humanity's next move. The stars twinkled above Earth, serene and unbothered, as the remnants of the mighty Zarkonian Empire vanished into the void. Their warships, once symbols of dominance and terror, retreated with engines burning at maximum speed, leaving behind only the faint aftershocks of their jump drives. The invasion was over, and humanity had won. Not through superior firepower, not through strategic genius, but through sheer, incomprehensible lunacy. The aftermath of an invasion. The morning after the Zarkonian withdrawal, the world's leaders gathered in a hastily arranged emergency meeting. It was meant to be a war council, a desperate last-stand strategy session. Instead, it turned into something much stranger. At precisely 7:00 UTC, President Eleanor Vasquez of the United Human Nations took her seat at the virtual conference, rubbing her temples. Across from her, Prime Minister Hiroshi Tanaka of Japan sipped his tea, while Chancellor Eric Bauer of the European Federation simply stared at his screen, blinking in stunned silence. Defense Secretary James O'Reilly, the only one who seemed somewhat pleased, chuckled as he clicked through the latest intelligence reports. "All right," Vasquez exhaled. "What the hell just happened?" A weary military analyst cleared his throat and began his briefing. "Madam President, based on intercepted transmissions, the Zarkonian High Command has classified humanity as a Class Omega existential threat." A brief silence followed. "Come again?" Chancellor Bauer asked. The analyst tapped his tablet. "Their words, not mine. They seem to believe that our species exhibits a severe and unpredictable disregard for self-preservation, and that engaging in further hostilities would pose a catastrophic and unnecessary risk to the continued existence of the Empire." "Ha," Tanaka muttered. O'Reilly grinned. "We scared them off." The analyst coughed. "That's an understatement, sir. We didn't just scare them. They are now actively afraid of us." He swiped to a new page. A translated Zarkonian war report appeared on the screen. Recommendation: avoid all engagement with humans. Do not initiate hostilities. Do not respond to provocations. Under no circumstances allow them to obtain advanced technology, as they will undoubtedly use it in ways that defy logic and threaten galactic stability. The risk of contamination is too high. We must flee before it is too late. O'Reilly let out a loud, satisfied whistle. "Well, I'll be damned." President Vasquez leaned back, processing the situation. "So let me get this straight," she said. "We just won a war without actually waging war." The analyst nodded. "Correct." Tanaka tapped his fingers together. "And the Zarkonians left behind thousands of their war beasts, ships, and experimental weapons, didn't they?" The analyst hesitated. "That is also correct." Chancellor Bauer adjusted his glasses, And we now have the entire galactic community wondering what the hell just happened. Yes. Vasquez folded her arms. So, in summary, an alien empire invaded, we accidentally broke their minds, and now we're sitting on a pile of advanced extraterrestrial tech. A long pause. Essentially, yes, Madam President. A deep silence followed. And then, Prime Minister Tanaka started laughing. The diplomatic fallout. Word of the Zarkonian retreat spread like wildfire. Within days, alien emissaries, spies, and diplomats from every major faction in the galaxy descended upon Earth, eager to understand what kind of species could force an empire that had ruled for millennia to flee without firing a single shot. The Galactic Union, a federation of old, cautious civilizations, sent their best negotiators. The Krill Dominion, a warrior race that prided itself on conquest, requested an audience with Earth's strongest fighters. The Velmeri Trade Consortium, sensing an opportunity, prepared lucrative war beast adoption programs to capitalize on humanity's newfound affinity for taming apex predators. And somewhere, deep in the void, a handful of surviving Zarkonian spies still observe humanity from afar, whispering among themselves. They are spreading. They are making alliances. They are laughing at us. The paranoia only grew. The rise of the Terran Empire. With access to Zarkonian technology, Earth entered a golden age of rapid advancement. Reverse-engineered hyperdrives, gravity manipulators, and plasma weaponry led to a massive leap forward in science and industry. Within 5 years, humanity had established its first interstellar colony. Within 10 years, human mercenaries had become the most sought-after fighters in the galaxy, known for their reckless tactics and absurd luck. And within 20 years, Earth wasn't just a planet anymore. It was the heart of the Terran Empire. Unlike other empires, humanity didn't conquer through war. They traded, allied, absorbed. World after world joined them voluntarily, not out of fear, but out of sheer fascination. Because, to the rest of the galaxy, humanity was a riddle that no one could solve. They turned death worlds into tourist attractions. They transformed bioweapons into pets. They used starship reactors to power amusement parks. Nothing about them made sense. And that, more than anything, terrified the old empires that had ruled for eons. The Zarkonians, now exiled and scattered, watched in growing horror as humanity thrived. A single unthinkable question began to creep into their minds. Had they made a mistake? Had they, by retreating, doomed themselves instead? Because the humans weren't just surviving. They were winning. They were spreading. And the galaxy would never be the same again. Epilogue. The message from Earth. 25 years after the failed invasion, a Zarkonian scout ship, hidden in the remains of a shattered moon, intercepted a message. It was a simple human transmission, broadcasting on all known frequencies. A video. A human in a leather jacket, standing atop a massive, tamed Titan striker, waving at the camera. He grinned. To our old friends, the Zarkonians, thanks for the free stuff. Hope you're doing well in hiding. If you ever want a rematch, just let us know. Oh, and by the way, we just invented warp gates. So, see you soon. The transmission cut out. The Zarkonians, now galactic nomads, screamed in terror.